March 6, 1945. 3:47 p.m. Cologne Cathedral Square. The shadow of the great Gothic towers stretched across shattered stone and burning vehicles as Feldwebel Karl Hoffmann pressed his eye to a cracked periscope and felt, for the first time in 3 years of war, uncertainty. He had memorized every Allied silhouette the way a hunter memorized the shapes of prey. The high, boxy profile of the Sherman with its short 75mm gun. The squat little Stuarts his comrades mocked as toys. Even the up-armored jumbo variants that still could not reliably pierce a Panther's frontal plate. But what rolled through the smoke now was different. Lower. Broader. Its turret massive and purposeful. Its gun long, longer than any American tank gun he had ever seen. "That is no Sherman," he whispered, and the tremor in his voice silenced the intercom. 18 seconds later, the world he believed in would begin to collapse. For nearly 3 years, German tank crews had lived inside steel fortresses that seemed to defy the rules of armored warfare. Since the first Tigers rumbled into combat outside Leningrad in 1942, the mythology of invincibility had grown with every battlefield engagement. The 88mm gun could kill at distances Allied crews could barely imagine. Frontal armor shrugged off hits that would have crippled lesser machines. In Normandy, in Italy, in the Ardennes, German heavy tanks dominated open ground. Crews learned to fight from long range, to let their optics and superior ballistics do the work. They struck first. They struck hard. And more often than not, they survived. The mathematics seemed irrefutable. A Tiger could destroy a Sherman at 2,000 meters. A Sherman needed near-suicidal proximity to hope for penetration. Even the formidable Panther, with its sloped frontal armor and high-velocity 75mm, outmatched most American tanks it faced in 1944. Confidence hardened into doctrine. Doctrine hardened into belief. And belief hardened into something dangerous, certainty. But 8,000 kilometers away, in the factories of Detroit and Michigan, another kind of power was gathering, quieter, methodical, industrial. American engineers had known since 1942 that the Sherman, reliable and plentiful as it was, would not be enough forever. Reports from Tunisia, Italy, and France confirmed it. German heavy armor had forced American crews to compensate with numbers, maneuver, artillery, and air power. Yet in the design rooms of the Detroit Tank Arsenal and the Fisher Body Plant at Grand Blanc, a new machine was taking shape under the unassuming project name T-26. It would become the M26 Pershing. The development was neither glamorous nor immediate. American industry did not chase perfection in a single leap. It iterated, tested, modified. The Pershing's cast turret required enormous foundry capability. Its new torsion bar suspension gave it a lower, more stable profile. And most critically, engineers mounted the 90mm M3 gun, derived from an anti-aircraft weapon and already proven in tank destroyer roles. Firing a 24-pound armor-piercing shell at blistering velocity, the 90mm could punch through armor once considered immune to American firepower. With specialized HVAP ammunition, even the thick hide of a King Tiger was no longer untouchable. Secrecy surrounded the program. Workers were told they were building improved Shermans. Components were dispersed across states. When the first production vehicles were shipped to Europe in January 1945, they were labeled as maintenance equipment and hidden among more familiar tanks. Only a handful of crews trained at Fort Knox knew the truth. They rehearsed in isolation, studied German armor diagrams, and boarded ships bound for Antwerp under strict orders. Speak to no one of what you command. When the first Pershings reached the front, they were scattered among units of the 3rd Armored Division, blending into columns of Shermans as best they could. Yet to trained eyes, the differences were unmistakable. The gun was too long. The hull too purposeful. The turret too heavy with intent. The Germans had no intelligence assessment for this silhouette. Recognition charts did not include it. Doctrine did not anticipate it. To German commanders, the American way of war meant quantity over quality, thousands of adequate machines overwhelming superior ones. The idea that American factories could pivot toward heavy tank production while maintaining their immense output seemed implausible. Reality arrived in flashes of fire. At Cologne Cathedral, A Panther positioned amid rubble spotted what its commander assumed was a variant Sherman approaching near the ruined hotel. Confident in his armor and gun, he ordered fire at close range. The round struck and ricocheted. 3 seconds later, the Pershing's 90mm answered. The shell smashed through the Panther's turret face, detonating inside. Flames erupted. Ammunition cooked off. The engagement was captured on film, a grim ballet in the cathedral's shadow. Another German tank attempted to intervene and met the same fate. The duel lasted minutes. Its consequences lasted far longer. Word spread quickly through the Panzer ranks. Americans possessed a long-gun Sherman. Reports described frontal penetrations at distances once thought safe. Panthers knocked out with single shots. Tigers destroyed from angles previously secure. Confusion reigned. Was it a modified Sherman? A limited experimental vehicle? How many existed? The uncertainty proved more corrosive than numbers. In truth, only a few dozen Pershings were operational in Europe before the war ended. Fewer than 30 saw real combat. Statistically, their presence was negligible against the thousands of Shermans still forming the backbone of Allied armor. Technically, the Pershing was not invincible. Its transmission had weaknesses. Its armor, though well sloped, was not thicker than a King Tiger's. In pure comparison, it was roughly equivalent to a Panther in many respects, superior in some areas, inferior in others. But war is fought not only with steel and explosives. It is fought with belief. For years, German tank crews had endured retreat and attrition sustained by one unshakable conviction: their machines were better. Even when outnumbered, they trusted in that edge. Now, every distant American silhouette forced hesitation. Was it a harmless Sherman or a Pershing capable of killing at any range? Identification required precious seconds. Seconds meant survival or death. Reports from late March and April 1945 reveal a pattern. Tanks abandoned for minor mechanical faults. Defensive positions withdrawn prematurely. Engagements avoided when possible. Prisoners interrogated after surrender described a psychological breaking point. Learning that Americans could field heavy tanks equal to theirs, while producing them in staggering quantities, shattered the last pillar of confidence. The production figures told the deeper story. Germany had built just over 1,300 Tiger I tanks and fewer than 500 King Tigers during the entire war. Each required immense resources and time. Meanwhile, American factories, once fully committed, produced over 2,000 Pershings by late 1945, in addition to tens of thousands of Shermans. Fisher Body alone completed more heavy tanks in months than Germany could manage in years. And American plants covered millions of square feet, shielded from bombing, powered by a civilian workforce untouched by invasion. German crews slowly realized they were not merely facing a new tank. They were confronting an industrial system capable of matching their finest designs while still overwhelming them numerically. On the Eastern Front, some German units still held technical superiority over Soviet armor in early 1945. But when veteran crews transferred west and heard of the American heavy tank, the effect was jarring. Confidence dissolved into doubt. Doctrine built around long-range dominance no longer applied. Without technological superiority, what remained? By April, the once proud armored spearheads that had swept through France in 1940 and nearly reached Moscow were shadows of themselves. Fuel shortages and air supremacy had already weakened them. The Pershing did not single-handedly destroy German armor. But it symbolized something deeper: parity. And parity, combined with America's production power, meant inevitability. In post-war memoirs, German tank veterans often described the moment they learned of the American 90mm gun as the point the war became unwinnable in their minds. It was not that the Pershing outperformed every German design. It was that the myth of inherent superiority, technical, industrial, even ideological, was gone. If the Americans could build this, what else could they build? The last tank engagements of April 1945 reflected this reversal. German crews hesitated before firing. Some withdrew without engaging. Others surrendered rather than risk facing an unknown heavy tank. The hunters of 1942 had become cautious prey in 1945. Today, preserved Pershings stand in museums beside captured tigers and panthers, steel relics of a brutal era. On paper, their specifications tell a story of comparable armor thickness, gun caliber, engine horsepower. But specifications alone do not explain what happened in those final weeks of the war. The true power of the M26 Pershing lay not merely in its 90mm gun or sloped armor. It lay in what it represented, the moment American industry proved it could equal German engineering while maintaining overwhelming production capacity. It was the physical manifestation of a democracy's industrial might focused with purpose. On March 6, 1945, as Karl Hoffmann stared through cracked glass at the unfamiliar silhouette in Cologne, he was not just seeing a new tank. He was witnessing the end of a belief system. When the Pershing's gun fired and German armor split open, it shattered more than steel. It shattered certainty. And in war, once certainty is gone, defeat is never far behind.